Shalom, shalom, friends. Today I'm invited to share briefly on the topic of conflict over resources. Globally, we are faced with a lot of conflict over issues of land, over issues of how we utilize geographies, and particularly for Christians. One big question that keeps popping up is, what do we do, particularly when we are Christ-centered? In my response to this question, which is a continuation of a Bible study which I was humbled to share with members of our church in Kenya, is the subject of peace leadership. I call it peace leadership, and specifically I talk about mimicking Abrahamic attitude, and I particularly say so developing from the text which is from Genesis chapter 13 verse 1 to 12. In Genesis chapter 13 verse 1 to 12, there's a narrative of Abraham and his nephew Lot. And this narrative, Abraham is a fairly wealthy person who is moving from Egypt to the Negev. Verse 1 says that so Abraham went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. The Bible says that Abraham had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. From the Negev, he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier and where he had first built an altar. There Abraham called on the name of the Lord. And the Bible continues to say that now Lot, who was moving about with Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support both of them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling arose between Abraham's herders and Lot's. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. And it continues from verse 8 going. So Abraham said to Lot, "Let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine. For we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. And if you go to the right, I will go to the left." Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan toward Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And so the Bible continues, the soul Lord chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. The two men parted company, and Abraham lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Dear friends, the lessons that one gleans out of the story of Abraham and his nephew Lot is one where you recognize that there is a well-off, there is a man of means, there is a man of power. But if you listen carefully to that story, there's something about a mindset, there's something about a characteristic attitude of abundance versus scarcity. And so I say here that for me, the lessons that I glean out of this story is one that defines leadership in two perspectives. On one side, you have Abraham embodying a mentality of abundance. And you see this in the fact that there's talk about the establishment of an altar. He had had an altar earlier. And if you listen to him, one of the things that comes out is that Abraham sojourns in worship, no matter his station in life. That is picked from verse 1 to 4. Abraham sojourns in worship, no matter the station where he is in life. His wealth not mattering at this time. He's a person who establishes altars wherever he goes. That would be a challenge to us as we do engage with people in contexts of conflict over resources. Do we recognize that we need to establish an altar of worship? Yet, if you look at verse 5 to 7, there's something that comes through. Possessing, yet not being possessed by the wealth and status. If I were in that context and knowing that I am dealing with a young person and I have wealth, I have means, and this younger person has his people starting to create trouble, it's common and it feels sensible to order the person away so that you remain with the security of what you have. But look, Abraham talks with an attitude that he owns all the wealth, but that wealth has not owned him. Looking at chapter 13, verse 8 to 9, I also see a situation where Abraham is foregoing what is definitely, in these circumstances, his rights. He is not worshipping rights, but he is worshipping a living God for whom he establishes an altar. And so we may have rights, But those rights must not be a subject of our worship. Otherwise, we will not have the right mentality that would help us to build peace in a community. One may reason that then how comes Abraham took a decision in which he ceded his right? If you read the text carefully, you understand the depth that by the establishment of an altar, Abraham made decisions by discerning faith and not by the cravings of sight. He was not attracted to that which Lot was attracted to. And in looking at what Lot embraced, you can see a scarcity mentality that believes that the assurance of possession, taking the best, is the only way. But look, Abraham takes decisions by discerning faith. He has faith. Whichever direction you take, I will take the opposite. How many times are we called upon as leaders, as pastors, to seed ground, to help members enjoy peace in our circumstances? I submit, therefore, gleaning from these texts, that we create and promote peaceful communities when we prosper the mentality of abundance. And it is possible that we can claim this mentality by ensuring that every space where we are establishing an altar of worship, and that we make decisions. Even when we reason, we take the confidence that there is going to be enough, even when it appears that there are challenges. So I invite us, when we have conflict over resources, let us have the habit of exercising Abrahamic attitude, the Abrahamic mentality of abundance. I am convinced that he was able to succeed, he was able to thrive, despite the fact that his attitude of abundance took him to the grounds which were not as good as those that his nephew took. Reading ahead in Genesis, you will learn that at a later stage, it's the same Abraham who had to go and battle kings when his same nephew was taken hostage. And it is courtesy of his intervention that again he was able to redeem his nephew and his wealth. Mentality of abundance is the answer to our play, is the answer to our call to facilitate peaceful community existing in despite of the resources which may appear to be limited and which may precipitate conflict. So I invite you to this space to continue thinking and to adopt the right mentality. Thank you, friends. Thank you for listening. And I believe that the Lord will enable us to deal with another topic in this aspect, and most likely um, expound on the aspects that we have not addressed. Abundance mentality, the Abrahamic mentality, is the mentality that we need as we handle community conflicts over resources. Thank you, and God bless you.